इस हॉल में बैठे प्रत्येक व्यक्ति के लिए और आपके टीवी के दर्शकों के लिए भी उतनी ही गर्व की बात है। साथियों, आज पूरी दुनिया 21वीं सदी को भारत की सदी कहती है। बड़ी बड़ी रेटिंग एजेंसीज, बड़े बड़े अर्थशास्त्री, बड़े बड़े जानकार राइजिंग भारत को लेकर बहुत आश्वस्त है और इन लोगों के मन में कोई इफ नहीं है, बट नहीं है, नो इफ नो बट्स। आखिर ऐसा क्यों है? कोई सवालिया निशान नहीं, ऐसा क्यों है? ऐसा इसलिए है क्योंकि पूरी दुनिया आज ये देख रही है कि पिछले 10 साल में भारत ने कितने बड़े परिवर्तन किए हैं। आजादी के बाद से जो सिस्टम बना, जो वर्क कल्चर बना, उस सिस्टम में ये ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन लाना इतना आसान नहीं था, लेकिन ये हुआ है और ये हम भारतीयों ने ही करके दिखाया है। आज भारत का कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल हर भारतीय की बातों में झलकता है। आज हम विकसित भारत की बात कर रहे हैं, आज हम आत्मनिर्भर भारत की बात कर रहे हैं और लोग चाहे विपक्ष में हो, देश के भीतर हो या देश के बाहर हो, सब
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's election year in the US and tonight we're bringing you a special interview. A one-on-one with Donald Trump's Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. We talked about relations between India and the US, also whether he could be Trump's running mate. Stay tuned for a snippet of that chat. Meanwhile, guess who's entering the AI race? It's Saudi Arabia, and if you know the Saudis, you know one thing. It's going to be a very expensive bet. We'll tell you what works in Saudi Arabia's favor and also what India can learn from it. In the US, the immigration battle is heating up. Texas wants to arrest and prosecute illegal migrants. Could immigration be Joe Biden's Achilles heel? In Hong Kong, another security law has been passed. In West Asia, Trump's son-in-law has waded into the Gaza war. He says Gaza is prime waterfront real estate. We'll discuss what he meant. In India, Prime Minister Modi is embarking on a foreign trip. He'll be in Bhutan on Thursday and Friday. In China, there's more trouble for embattled developer Evergrande. And today on the International Day of Happiness, the Happiness Index is out again. We'll bring you the big takeaways, but first, the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. During the phone call, Prime Minister Modi congratulated President Putin on his election win. Both leaders discussed the situation in Ukraine and also agreed to strengthen bilateral ties. India's Home Minister Amit Shah speaks at Network 18's Rising Bharat Summit. He says the target is to get over 400 seats in the upcoming general election. Amit Shah also slams the opposition Congress party over electoral bonds, assuring that the new citizenship law is no threat to India's minorities. The Japanese yen hits a 16-year low against the euro. On Tuesday, the Bank of Japan announced a rate hike, the first in 17 years. The move was to boost a fragile economy, but so far the yen has seen no benefit from it. The European Union strikes a deal to cap Ukrainian imports. After Russia's invasion, duty-free Ukrainian imports of poultry, corn and some grains were allowed, but the decision led to fierce protests by farmers in the EU. The new agreement prevents cheap imports from flooding the market. In Myanmar, no takers for Aung San Suu Kyi's house. This is where she spent years under house arrest. The property is being auctioned for more than $100 million amid a family feud. Since 2021, Suu Kyi has been in detention after the junta ousted her. And Japan warns football fans, asking them to not go to North Korea for a World Cup qualifier. The match on the 26th of March will be played in Pyongyang. It's the first one for the two sides in North Korea since 2011. Saudi Arabia wants to join the AI race, which can only mean one thing: a ludicrous investment is loading. Guess how much the kingdom is planning to splurge? Reports say $40 billion, 40 billion, to make Saudi Arabia a hub of artificial intelligence. Now, first, some context. OpenAI is probably the most famous AI firm on the planet. Their valuation is $80 billion. So Riyadh is investing half of that money in AI. But then again, this is Saudi Arabia. When was lack of money ever a problem for them? So let's look at their plan. Saudi Arabia's PIF is leading this mission. PIF is the Public Investment Fund. It handles the kingdom's investments. Now, reports say they're in talks with other financiers as well. Chief among them, Andreessen Horowitz. It's a US venture capital firm. It's a huge supporter of artificial intelligence. And one of its founders is Mark Andreessen. He says AI could save the world. So Riyadh wants Andreessen Horowitz to open an office in the kingdom. The hope is to get the fund running by the second half of 2024, the second half of this year. But will investors take the bait? Will top engineers come to Saudi Arabia? The PIF chief certainly thinks so. He believes Saudi Arabia has some advantages. Let me quote from what he said. AI will consume a lot of energy, and we are the global leader when it comes to fossil fuel energy and when it comes to renewable energy. And he could be right. AI requires a lot of processing power. Sometimes thousands of chips work in tandem, which means a lot of electricity is needed. Data centers will need 50% more power by 2027, and Riyadh has a lot of it. They're the third largest producer of fossil fuels. Plus, the AI bet aligns with the kingdom's long-term goal. Crown Prince MBS Mohammed Bin Salman calls it Vision 2030. The plan is to diversify away from oil to focus on other industries like tourism and technology. So on paper, Saudi Arabia has all the ingredients: a lot of money, a lot of energy, and some flexibility on regulation, plus a young population. But can it attract the best talent? You see, Saudi Arabia is largely a closed society, so getting people to come and work there will be tough. Does Riyadh have a plan for that? The plan is networking. One of the kingdom's top colleges is KAUST, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. It is led by this man, Dr. Tony F. Chan. Now, Chan has worked mostly in Western colleges. He's taught at Yale and UCLA. And before that, he studied at Caltech and Stanford. So the idea is to spread the word, to use big names to attract top talent. And it's not just Saudi Arabia. The UAE is also investing in AI. In 2020, Abu Dhabi opened the world's first university dedicated to artificial intelligence. Today, they have a minister for artificial intelligence. All of this is driving the industry in West Asia. So good news for them. It could mean more jobs and less dependence on oil. But for countries like India, it is also a wake-up call, a nudge to invest more. In fact, this month, India unveiled a new AI mission. The plan is to spend 10,000 crore rupees over 5 years. That's around $1.2 billion over the next 5 years. But Saudi Arabia is spending $40 billion. Do you see the gap here? India cannot compete with the Gulf on financing. So India must look elsewhere, like talent and market power, or partnerships with existing AI players. And one such opportunity could be opening up. The Indian government is looking to buy 10,000 GPUs. What's GPU? Graphics Processing Unit. These GPUs are the building blocks of artificial intelligence. The plan is to make these GPUs available to Indian AI firms. But where will these GPUs come from? Maybe NVIDIA. Its founder says he wants to step in. Let me in fact quote from what he said. If India is buying GPUs for AI, NVIDIA builds really good AI GPUs. When you go back, please spread the word. If somebody wants to buy GPUs, I'm open for business and we're quite interested in it. So NVIDIA is game and they're the top dogs right now. The company makes up 80% of the AI chip market. One company, 80%. Everyone buys from them. Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft. OpenAI, Tesla, all these companies buy NVIDIA chips. And this week they unveiled a new product, the Blackwell B200 chip. Listen to this.
This is Hopper. This is Hopper. Hopper changed the world. This is Blackwell. It's okay, Hopper. You're very good. Good boy. Oh, good girl. 208 billion transistors, and so you could see, I can see, there's a small line between two dies. This is the first time two dies have abutted like this together in such a way that the two dies think it's one chip.
Hopper is NVIDIA's old chip, Blackwell is the new one, and its performance is mind-boggling. The Blackwell is 30 times faster than Hopper. It has 208 billion transistors on it. Hopper had just 80 billion. Now, transistors are part of every chip. Think of it like a switch. A transistor can turn off and control the flow of electricity via chips. More transistors equals more power. Experts say Blackwell will help NVIDIA consolidate its top position. An Indian company is also buying it, Yoto Data Services. They're expected to get this chip by October. So my point is quite simple here. American firms have a head start and Gulf states have endless funds. So it's very easy to fall behind in this AI race. India needs to take some radical decisions to catch up fast. Now let's talk about a problem which even AI cannot solve. America's immigration mess. Yesterday, the US Supreme Court passed an order. And this order threatens to disrupt America's legal framework and its immigration policies. At the center of this controversy is Texas. It's a border state in the US, and it is engaged in a bitter standoff with President Joe Biden. You see, every year Texas witnesses an influx of undocumented migrants. They've been seeing this problem for years, and they've seen no solution really. So Texas decided to take matters into its own hands. The state passed its own immigration law. Through this law, Texas gave itself sweeping powers. It could detain immigrants and prosecute them. Texas can even order these migrants to return to their home countries. Now, the Biden administration was quick to challenge this law. It moved the lower courts, and it managed to obtain an injunction. So Texas could not implement this law. They then challenged the injunction. Texas challenged this injunction. It moved the US Supreme Court, and yesterday America's top court sided with the state of Texas.
The United States Supreme Court, using all of its powers or minimizing its own powers, is allowing SB4 to be enacted in Texas, thereby allowing other rogue states like Texas to pass patchwork immigration enforcement bills in their own states.
So the Supreme Court ruled that Texas could implement its immigration law. But the relief was temporary. Hours after the Supreme Court verdict, the lower courts intervened again. They decided to fast-track the proceedings. And a hearing has been scheduled for Wednesday. Lawyers from both the federal government and the state of Texas will appear, and they will present their arguments. So the implementation of this law is on hold again. And this case might end up in the US Supreme Court once again. Because yesterday's ruling is very clear. It did not say anything on the legality of the law. The Supreme Court judgment focused on just one thing. Can Texas implement this law while it is still being challenged in courts? So that's what the court ordered on. But our story does not focus on the legality of it. It focuses on the politics of immigration. It leaves Joe Biden exposed because immigration has been a weak link in the Biden presidency. Under his leadership, illegal crossings from Mexico shot up to almost 250,000 in December. It was an all-time high. During the Biden presidency, over 6 million illegal immigrants have been detained on American borders. Over 6 million. And this number exceeds previous administrations. It's more than the presidencies of Donald Trump, Barack Obama, even George W. Bush. So you could say that immigration as a problem has become worse under Joe Biden. And a lot of Americans seem to agree. Here are the findings of a recent poll. More than 2/3 of American citizens disapprove of Biden's immigration policies. So the tussle with Texas will only highlight this weakness further. America's top court has diminished the president's authority, it seems. Fundamentally, this case is about jurisdiction. Who has the power to decide which migrant can stay in the U.S. and which migrant must leave? Who decides that? Usually it's the federal government, which sets the immigration policies. And it's the case in most countries. It's also the case in India. Here in India, states cannot make laws on immigration. Only the central government can make laws. The states are supposed to enforce those laws. And it's the same in the U.S. But Texas is now challenging the system. It is trying to forge its own path and challenge the authority of President Joe Biden. And America's neighbors are already complaining. Mexico, for instance, has issued a statement. It has refused to accept any migrants deported by Texas.
Today, we are also at a critical moment where the Supreme Court of the United States approved today. Yesterday, it had put an impasse, but today it approved the SB 4 law, which is an anti-immigrant, xenophobic, discriminatory law.
So America's immigration mess has now become a headache for its allies and neighbors. Joe Biden wants 4 more years to fix it. But his re-election bid is proving to be an uphill task. He's losing support from his core vote bank. And this includes the Latino and Hispanic vote. It's moving away from Biden, according to recent opinion polls. The row over immigration can only weaken President Biden's case. Among the biggest critics of Joe Biden is Mike Pompeo. Should not be a surprise, though. He served as Donald Trump's Secretary of State from 2018 to 2021, and before that, he headed the CIA. As Secretary, Pompeo brought hawkishness to U.S. policy. He was tough on Iran, lenient to Israel, and clear-headed about China's challenge. He also worked closely with India during this period. Today, we spoke one-on-one with Mike Pompeo, and we discussed the 2 wars, America's relationship with India, the state of Pakistan and their recent elections, also speculation that he could be Trump's running mate. Here's a small excerpt of that conversation. Joining me is a leader who's been a core member of the first Trump administration and who's also tipped to play some sort of a role in the second one if that happens. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, welcome to First Post, sir.
Okay, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So let me start with the question that everyone wants an answer to. Do you think that you will be Donald Trump's running mate?
Oh, goodness. Who knows? I don't comment on jobs I've not been offered. There are a number of great people who would do fantastic work as his running mate. First things first, he's got to get organized, get ready, and it's really important to the world, in my view, that he's successful. He runs a winning campaign, and he indeed becomes president. Who's his vice president? Much less important.
Would you be open to the idea if it were to be offered to you?
No, I've said many times, if I'm offered a job and I think I can serve America in some way and make an impact, I would absolutely do it.
As the former CIA chief and then Secretary of State, I'm sure you also worked closely with the Indian leadership. What was your impression? And those same leaders are still in office, Prime Minister Modi and Minister Jaishankar and the NSA chief. Are there any particular interactions that come to mind? Is there something that you want to share with us and our audience?
Well, first, I'm hopelessly biased. I love them both and enjoyed working with them, mostly because they're incredibly professional and capable. And they put India first. They are diligent about understanding the things that the Indian people need. And so Foreign Minister Jaishankar is among my closest former colleagues. I didn't work as directly with the Prime Minister, although I met him many times and traveled with the President to see him. But we always knew we had a friend, someone who was going to vigorously defend their own interests. And that meant we didn't always agree, for sure. But we knew we had a good, responsible counterparty that was working on many of the same things we were to make life better for the people of their own country and people of the world. I'm so happy they're still there.
There's a lot going for the India-US relationship, but there are some not so good parts as well. Like, For instance, we've just rolled out a new citizenship law called the CAA. And the US government has said that it's concerned about this issue and it will monitor it. Do you agree with this statement?
Our approach, the Trump administration's approach, was very different to these kinds of things. I don't want to talk about this specifically, but I'll give you a model. Our model was we had a lot more space for leaders, especially in democracies, places like India, right, the world's largest democracy. We had a lot of tolerance for democracies fighting it out politically amongst themselves and coming to a resolution that made sense for their country. It might be a model that was different than the American model. It might be the same, but we had a lot of space for that.
And that's another, I wouldn't say point of contention, but a point where there isn't total agreement between Washington and New Delhi, because India sees Pakistan as a state sponsor of terrorism. But American policymakers have been accused of ignoring India's concern vis-a-vis Pakistan. Do you sympathize with New Delhi's point of view more now?
I wouldn't say more. No, I share the Indian view. I absolutely share the I worry about, and we were very clear with Pakistan. We took an approach that was very different from the Obama administration's approach when we came in 2017, a very different approach to this. No, we share not only the Indian view, but the global view of the risk of terrorism from extremism inside of Pakistan, extremism that flows in from Afghanistan via Pakistan. No, these are very real risks that the Indian people are right to address.
A recent news report claimed that President Donald Trump ordered the CIA to smear the Chinese government on their social media, and the operation is said to have started in 2019 when you were in office. Were you aware about it?
So I wasn't the CIA director in 2019.
But you were part of the core team of Donald Trump.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't talk about CIA operations.
Did you know that there was such an operation? That it's out in the public domain?
I understand. The New York Times says lots of things.
Yeah.
Most of it is false and silly. It's a disreputable institution.
Absolutely. The other thing is TikTok. It's a big issue in the U.S. election.
Yes, you all banned it. Good for you.
Yes, we banned it long back, and the rest of the world is now coming to realize what sort of a challenge/threat it poses. It's also a big issue between the U.S. and China, and President Trump wanted to ban it in 2020 as well. The current administration, I think, cannot decide what it wants to do, because on the one hand, they want a ban. On the other hand, the president is now on TikTok. He has an account because a lot of young people are there. Do you support a nationwide ban in the U.S. on TikTok?
In the end, the problem isn't TikTok. The problem is the Chinese Communist Party. And the Chinese Communist Party ought not to have any capacity to shape the minds and beliefs and core understandings of young people in the United States of America. So if you start with that principle, what does that mean? It means they can't run a social media company inside of your country. And so, yes, we should ensure that whatever TikTok is, a bunch of code, an algorithm, a bunch of short little dance videos, whatever it turns out to be, I'm fine with all of that. Knock yourself out. Have an algorithm, have dance videos, but they can't be owned by the People's Liberation Army.
Do you hold China responsible for the COVID-19 pandemic, and do you think that the world has done enough to hold it accountable? And if you were to go to be in office again, would you take it up again?
So you had two questions. The first answer is yes, and the second one is no. So the first question was, is the Chinese Communist Party responsible for COVID? The answer is yes, and I'll elaborate, because that's important. And second, has enough been done to hold them accountable? The answer is not remotely close. But now they haven't been held accountable in any material way. The World Health Organization is still run by the same guy who's told us that the Chinese were doing a great job in protecting the world. We should never forget that.
Yes.
He's still in charge today. Imagine the next pandemic. Same guy, same country, same Wuhan lab. When I say that China's responsible, they created this virus in a laboratory. The virus escaped accidentally, not intentionally, but it escaped from that laboratory. For that, accidents happen. They probably didn't do enough. But in any event, that was not an intentional release. But what was absolutely intentional was everything they did from the moment they became aware that the virus was running around the world, a relatively contagious, relatively lethal virus running around the world. They did everything they could to deny the world the capacity to protect the innocent people who died as a result of this virus. They hid the story. They disappeared journalists. They disappeared doctors. All the things that no nation, India wouldn't do this. America wouldn't do this. If we had an accidental release from a laboratory in one of our countries, we would immediately tell the whole world this is what happened. We would get the best minds in the world to try to address this, and we would do everything we could to contain this in the absolute moment, real time. These guys waited a very long time and then sent thousands of people around the world to transmit this virus, killing tens of millions of people, destroying billions of dollars worth of wealth, and setting the global economy back by at least a couple of years. No accountability to date for what Xi Jinping did to the world.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Vantage continues after a short break.
उपलब्धियां देख रहे हैं। सिर्फ 10 साल में 25 करोड़ लोगों का गरीबी से बाहर निकलना, क्या ये ऐसे ही हो गया होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का 11वें नंबर से 5वें नंबर की इकोनॉमी बन जाना, क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का फॉरेक्स रिजर्व बढ़कर के $700 बिलियन के पार पहुंच जाना, ये क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का एक्सपोर्ट $700 बिलियन पार कर जाना, क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा? और ये तो अभी कुछ भी नहीं है, अभी तो और भी आगे जाना है। साथियों, यहां बड़े बड़े जर्नलिस्ट मौजूद हैं, इंडस्ट्री के लोग हैं, सिविल सोसाइटी के दिग्गज हैं, पॉलिटिकल फील्ड के लोग भी हैं, ब्यूरोक्रेसी वर्ल्ड के भी लोग हैं। आप जानते हैं कि हमारे यहां सरकारों में ब्यूरोक्रेसी में काम कैसे होता रहा है। फिर वो एक फैक्टर क्या था जिसकी वजह से ये
Now let's talk about Hong Kong. Once known as Asia's financial hub, the city is now kryptonite for big business. And the reason is China's Communist Party. 4 years ago, China passed a national security law. A very controversial law. It killed the autonomy of Hong Kong. It dissolved the one country, two systems model. Now Beijing has pushed a new set of rules. And they further tightened Beijing's grip on the city of Hong Kong. They passed a new national security law. Hong Kong's chief executive has called it historic.
Today marks a historic moment for Hong Kong, a moment that has been awaited for 26 years, 8 months and 19 days. It is the historic moment when the 6th administration of the Special Administrative Region and the 7th Legislative Council have finally completed their glorious mission. This represents a proud moment in the glorious history of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region.
But as far as businesses are concerned, there is nothing to celebrate here, and I'll tell you why. This new national security law builds on the previous legislation. And you know why businesses the world over were drawn to Hong Kong? Because it encouraged capitalism without enforcing the strict rules of mainland China. Workers, especially from the West, could enjoy the freedoms that they were used to back home. And they could enjoy these freedoms while they worked in Hong Kong. But this new national security law effectively ends all those freedoms. The provisions empower Beijing. The new law will allow China to exert its influence on businesses operating out of Hong Kong. It empowers the police to detain suspects for up to 16 days without charge. And if that wasn't bad enough, the new law also gives Hong Kong's chief executive sweeping powers. He can now directly ban organizations, even companies, from operating in Hong Kong. And the phrasing is quite vague. The law says companies can be banned if they are found, and I'm quoting, working for foreign forces. But what does that mean? What is Beijing's definition of working for foreign forces? The law does not spell it out. Neither does Beijing care to explain. It lists the punishment for offences like treason, sabotage, sedition, theft of state secrets, external interference, but the law does not explain what constitutes treason, what qualifies as a theft of state secrets. If an employee decides to finish some work home, if they decide to take some files from work to their place, does that mean that they're stealing secrets? And the law has several such vague provisions, which means that they can be interpreted in a variety of ways, in ways that suit the state. And this ambiguity is a big risk for any business. Why would anyone want to work in Hong Kong if they constantly have to look over their shoulder? The writing is on the wall, it seems. Hong Kong is no longer safe for business.
Yeah, I think it's a clear repudiation of the city's history as being a basically Western-oriented liberal place, now to make it much more in line with current China, Xi Jinping's China.
Prominent economists agree. Stephen Roach is one of them. He's a well-known economist and the former chairman of Morgan Stanley Asia. Now, Roach used to be bullish about Hong Kong, but he now holds a very different opinion about the city, and this is what he wrote recently. It pains me to say Hong Kong is over. And the Americans agree, it seems. American businesses are leaving Hong Kong. Just a little over 1,200 companies operate in the city now, and this is the lowest since the year 2004. Big money is also leaving Hong Kong. Investors are withdrawing funds. In January this year, global funds sold thousands of shares. They offloaded stakes worth $2 billion. This mass exit has benefited India. Earlier this year, Indian markets surpassed Hong Kong, becoming the fourth largest in the world. And Hong Kong has tried its best to arrest this decline. Lawmakers have promised to revive the economy and keep businesses and investors in the city, but these assurances sound hollow. The environment has completely changed in Hong Kong. Foreign companies are operating in fear. Reports say some of them have enforced new rules for their employees who work in Hong Kong. Their access to company databases has been limited. And some of these employees are now using burner phones. This new national security law will only make the life of these employees harder. For our next story, let me ask you a question. What do you imagine when I say the word Gaza? War, airstrikes, buildings in rubble, dying citizens? Those would be the common answers. But if you ask this to Jared Kushner, he'll say a valuable waterfront. Now, for those who do not know, Jared Kushner is a former property dealer. He's Donald Trump's son-in-law. He was a senior foreign policy advisor for Donald Trump when he was president. He was charged with making the peace plan for West Asia. And this is what he had to say about Gaza. I will quote, "Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable if people would focus on building up livelihoods. It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and then clean it up." Clean it up. Those were his words. Basically, Kushner wants Israel to expel civilians from Gaza, push them into the Negev desert, clean up the war-torn strip, and make beach bungalows there. The comments have not gone down well. But Kushner stands by his remarks, and he says they were taken out of context.
The plan before they saw it.
Either way, this idea is not new. Israeli settlers have long pushed for it. An Israeli real estate firm even took it one step further. It unveiled plans for homes in Gaza, and it came up with an ad that claimed a house on the beach is no longer a dream. It led to a lot of backlash. The international community slammed it. Soon the firm retracted the ad and the proposal, and they called it a joke for its followers. Palestinians, of course, did not find it funny. It's been 5 months since the war broke out. Today is day 166. 31,000 Gazans have died. The strip is a mound of rubble. More than 1 million people are starving. 300,000 could face a famine by the month of May. The United Nations says Israel may be using starvation, and I'm quoting, as a weapon of war.
You have about 129,000 people in the rest of the world facing the threat of famine. That number now goes up to 1.1 million, or 8 times as large, just for Gaza alone.
Meanwhile, Israel wants to push into Rafah. They say it's the last frontier for Hamas, and the world has warned against it. Rafah is located on the Egyptian border. An estimated 1.5 million Palestinians have taken refuge there. That's more than half of Gaza's population. They're in Rafah. The US says a Rafah offensive will be a mistake. It has asked Israel to achieve its military aims by other means. And Joe Biden has personally warned Prime Minister Netanyahu against it. He says such an offensive would be a quote-unquote red line, but the Israeli Prime Minister seems adamant.
We continue to feel quite strongly that such an operation in Rafah, where there are more than 1 million people seeking refuge, a region that continues to be a key conduit for the entrance of humanitarian aid, that doing something like that without a credible and clear plan, something that without a plan that also doesn't address for the various humanitarian pieces, would be a disaster.
Biden has asked Netanyahu to send a team to Washington, a team including top officials from military, intelligence and humanitarian departments to discuss the Rafah operation. Now, details of this meeting are still being worked out, but it may take place early next week. Until then, the White House has asked Israel to allow more aid to flow into Gaza. And amid all of this, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in West Asia. He will first visit Saudi Arabia and then go to Israel. Blinken will meet top officials to discuss the peace plan. His only job right now is to secure a ceasefire.
We have to get this hostage deal. We are working 24/7, leaning in, and trying to make sure that we get that hostage deal, so that we have a temporary ceasefire, so that we can get that all important aid into Gaza.
On Monday, Israel's spy chief was in Doha. He joined a new round of talks with Egyptian and Qatari mediators. Qatar says it's too early to announce anything because they're expecting a counter proposal from Israel. And this proposal will then be presented to Hamas. So talks are still on. All sides are doing their bit. But given the situation at the moment, a peace deal is the need of the hour. Our next story is from Africa, from Ethiopia in the northeast. It's home to about 120 million people. About 60% of them are under the age of 24. So it's a young country with a sizable student population. And on Friday night, a number of these students pulled off a heist. They took millions of dollars from Ethiopia's largest bank, the state-run commercial bank of Ethiopia, but it was not some elaborate robbery. No, the students just took advantage of a computer glitch. The bank stopped monitoring withdrawals, and the people simply took advantage of that. Here's our report.
When you think about college life, what comes to mind? Hectic classes and boring professors? First loves and lifelong friendships? Or maybe you think about the poverty. Instant noodles every day. Working odd jobs at odd hours alongside lessons. And just struggling to manage on your own. If that last bit sounds relatable, you'll wish you were in Ethiopia this weekend. Ethiopia's biggest bank, the Commercial Bank of Ethiopia or CBE, faced a technical glitch on Friday night. It would process the transaction but not update the balance sheet, meaning people could keep withdrawing money even after their accounts ran out, because the bank didn't correctly debit their accounts. Now, it seems this glitch manifested late on Friday night. Since it was late, perhaps the bank could have swept this glitch under the carpet, were it not for Ethiopian students. Some student pulling an all-nighter must have needed a midnight snack. They would have gone to the ATM and noticed the glitch, which means the news spread like wildfire across campus. And soon every student was draining the bank. Addis Ababa University, Jimma University and Dilla University were the hotspots. Students there went on a frenzy, so much so that the bank CEO blamed them directly for the loss. He has asked the students to return the money they took. He promised that no legal action will be taken against them. University authorities are also urging the students to return the cash. But knowing students, there's a good chance that most of the money is already gone. So the bank may have a tough time getting anything back. It may be staring at a loss of millions. The exact amount isn't known. The Commercial Bank of Ethiopia hasn't given a final figure. It could be that they don't know, or maybe they're embarrassed. Because estimates range from 2.4 to 6 billion Ethiopian birr. That's between 42 to 105 million US dollars. It's a lot of money to lose over the course of a few hours. The bank realized what was going on in the early hours of Saturday, and it hit the kill switch. It halted all transactions until the glitch was fixed. This affected all online payments, bank-to-bank transfers, and even ATM withdrawals. This wasn't just limited to CBE customers. The bank powers other payment systems too, like apps for fuel payments. That was shut down as well. It shows just how interconnected systems are these days, and how one glitch can set off a chain reaction, bringing online transactions to a standstill. Does this mean we should move back to cold, hard cash? That's up to you. But if you're an Ethiopian student, chances are you have enough money for a lifetime's worth of instant noodles.
Do you remember Evergrande? It was supposed to be China's melting point, their own Lehman moment. But it's proving to be a Lehman period because Evergrande's troubles continue. They were once the largest property firm in China. Their founder was the country's richest man, but now he's been banned from the financial markets, and that's just the tip of it. Evergrande has been accused of financial fraud, of inflating their annual revenues. Do you know by how much? Almost $78 billion, which makes this China's biggest fraud case. And what's the punishment? So far, it's a fine. Evergrande has been asked to pay $580 million. It's not clear how they will pay this money, though, because the company is bankrupt. Evergrande is valued at $275 million. Their total debt is $300 billion. So good luck paying that fine. China began this investigation around 8 months ago. They found Evergrande had fudged their sales. As a result, they could report inflated profits, almost 63% higher in 2019. And 87% higher in 2020. China's regulators are blaming Evergrande's founder for this. His name is Hui Ka-yan. He graduated from college in 1982. He then worked at a steel factory for 10 years, and in 1996 he started Evergrande. Hui's method of expansion was debt. The country was going through a property boom, so China's state banks were more than willing to help him. He built more than 1,000 housing projects in China, more than 1,000 projects, and in 2009 he took the company public. But trouble started in 2021. That's when China shut the loan tap. So suddenly, Evergrande could not repay its creditors. Their expansion was stalled. That same year, it defaulted on loans. We've heard a lot of speculation since then, a lot of doomsday predictions, but the impact has been largely contained. Which brings us to this fraud case. What message is China trying to send here? That the golden age is over. No more cheap loans, no more regulatory freebies, and no more unchecked expansion. China is saying, look, the bad apples are out. We are punishing Evergrande and its founder, and we are cleaning up the property sector. China's housing minister issued a stern warning this month. He said if developers are struggling, they should go bankrupt.
For real estate enterprises that are severely insolvent and have lost their ability to operate, they should undergo bankruptcy and restructuring following the principles of rule of law and marketization. Actions that harm the interests of the masses will be resolutely investigated and punished, and those who play unlawful games will be held accountable.
Will investors buy it, though? Well, confidence is still low. Property investments fell 9% in January and February. Property sales plunged almost 21%, and new constructions were down 30%. So the answer is no. Investors are not buying it. What is China doing to change that? Last month, a big decision was announced. Beijing made its biggest reduction to its mortgage rates. The idea was to encourage home buyers. They also launched a whitelist mechanism. Basically, a few property developers were identified, the ones with potential. These firms got funds from state banks, but clearly more needs to be done here because the property sector is key to China's growth. This sector makes up 20% of their revenue, 70% of the household wealth, and 25% of China's GDP. Unless this sector revives, China cannot regain its mojo. And a few penalties may not be enough because Evergrande is not the root problem in China. It's a symptom of the larger mismanagement. To Spain now, which is testing out robo-dogs to help traffic cops. They're sleek, they move fast, they have flashing lights on the top, and they can apparently control the traffic. These robots have been designed to help the police. They can help spot traffic violations. They can track accidents. It makes the job of policing easier. Right now, these robo-dogs are remote controlled, but in the future, they may be able to do this on their own, courtesy artificial intelligence. Our next report tells you all about them.
Imagine a world where your faithful companion is not a furry, drooling creature, but this sleek, robotic marvel, one capable of feats beyond the wildest dreams of its canine ancestors. Gone are the days of muddy paw prints on the carpet and incessant barking at the delivery guy. Enter the era of the robotic rover, where obedience is programmed and shedding is a thing of the past. But the benefits of robo-dogs extend far beyond mere companionship. In Malaga, it has already joined the police workforce. Recently, the Spanish police took a robo-dog for a stroll. It was four-legged, green and black in color, and moving with great speed. The robo-dog entertained bystanders. It flashed lights. It made a whirring sound. Spain's police aims to integrate this robo-dog in their workforce. It can support the police's work. They can spot traffic violations, they can track accidents, they can report events, all while covering a larger area. For now, these robots are remote controlled, but eventually they could do this on their own, courtesy artificial intelligence.
We are using this project to support police work. What stands out in this project is that we are using 5G technology for the teleoperation of the robot to carry out image analysis and detect dangerous situations, like the use of e-scooters in prohibited areas.
This brings us to the rise of robotic working dogs. They are increasingly being deployed in the workforce. They can do tasks like inspections, security, and ensuring public safety. These robo-dogs are basically mobility platforms. They can be equipped with different payloads. This will depend on what kind of information companies want to gather. So the robo market is growing, and companies are joining the race. In the US, Boston Dynamics is developing the Spot robot. MIT is also building a smaller four-legged creature. It calls it the mini cheetah. Chinese companies too are in the race. Deep Robotics, Wayland and Unitary Robotics are all building their own versions.
This robot dog has an adaptive and self-balancing capability. If it encounters external interferences, it can automatically restore its balance. Just like when we kicked it, it could maintain its own balance. After it's turned over, it can get back up on its own. This is also what makes it different from other robots.
So canine cyborgs are on the rise, and the market will only grow in the future. Combining cutting-edge technology with fast movement and skills, it's a leap forward in technological innovation. With advancements in artificial intelligence and robotics, who's to say what the future holds?
They say comparison is the thief of joy. Ironically, when it comes to tracking our own joy, we love to compare. And it's not limited to humans, it applies to companies, even countries, maybe especially countries, because to them, happiness is an operational objective. Nations want to know where they stand, and every year they get a reality check, thanks to the World Happiness Index. It's an annual and global barometer. It is a subjective ranking of happiness. It studies 143 countries where participants are asked to score their lives. 6 variables are taken into account: GDP per capita, life expectancy, social support, freedom, generosity, and corruption. And these surveys are compiled. They frame a picture of the nation as a whole, and the nations are ranked on the basis of well-being. Today is the International Day of Happiness, and the latest World Happiness Report has been released. We dissected it for you. Which countries came on top? What were the obvious findings? What was hidden? And what were the big shockers or surprises? We'll discuss that, starting with the absolute non-shocker. Let me ask you this. Which country do you think came on top? No points for guessing. It was Finland again. For the 7th consecutive year, this Nordic nation has been ranked the happiest in the world. What explains this big win? Experts point to the Finnish infrastructure of happiness. A safe and secure environment, affordable opportunities, relative equality, high levels of trust, and most of all, a policy push. In Finland, happiness is at the front and center of governance, and it seems like the land of unicorns and rainbows. But which other nations came close? Finland was followed by Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, and Israel. That's right, Israel ranks 5th. Given the war with Hamas, This does come as a surprise. Israel has been in the top 10 since 2022, but what explains this jump to top 5? The rankings are based on a 3-year average, basically 2021 to 2023. So big events throughout the years are taken into account, but their impact is muted. So life evaluation in Israel fell sharply, but it only accounted for a third of the average. The timing matters as well. The happiness survey in Israel was conducted after October 7th, after the war broke out. But it was much before the warfare soared. Hence, the result was not as bad as one would expect. And this applies to the ranking of Palestine as well. Its statehood is not widely recognized, but as per this index, Palestine stands at number 103, which is not a great position to be in, but much better than one would expect, because the survey here was conducted much before October 7th in Palestine, before life evaluations would have plummeted. So there are some holes in this report. One can point to India's ranking and say the same. According to the World Happiness Index, India ranks at the 126th position, the same as last year, 126 out of 143 countries. India comes after nations like Niger, Burkina Faso, Iran and Ecuador, nations with a tense political climate and an array of problems. What explains this? According to the report, India's caste system plays a role. So do religious discrimination and unjust developmental schemes. Sure, there is room for improvement here, but putting India behind nations rocked by coups and violence seems like a stretch. And the surprises do not cease here. Older Indians have higher life satisfaction than the young. And this trend is picking up the world over. According to this report, something is going wrong with the young, specifically the Gen Z between the ages of 15 and 24. They're not happy. Especially in the UK, across Europe, the US and Australia, experts claim Gen Z is suffering an equivalent of a midlife crisis. They point to a lack of jobs, lack of affordable housing, fear about war and climate change, and most of all, social media. Social media is being blamed for robbing the young of their well-being, for worsening their psychological state and lowering their self-esteem. So everyone may not agree with the happiness rankings, but if there's one thing we can agree to, it is this. If the young are not as happy as they can be, it should upset us enough to do something about it.
वो एक फैक्टर है नियत। नियत सही तो काम सही। और नियत कौन सी? नेशन फर्स्ट की नियत। नमस्कार। अभी वैसे राहुल ने बड़ा वर्णन किया 5 साल पहले मैं जब आया था, और शायद उस समिट की तारीख या घटना आपके ग्रुप को तो याद रहना बहुत स्वाभाविक है, लेकिन शायद पत्रकार मन ये भी सोच सकता था, और शायद सोचा होगा लेकिन बोलते नहीं होंगे, कि क्या कारण होगा कि एक इंसान अपने कमिटमेंट के कारण इस समिट में इतने ही शांत मन से आया था और उसी समय वो किसी प्रक्रिया को दौड़ा रहा था, और जो दूसरे दिन सुबह दुनिया के लिए बहुत बड़ी खबर बन गई थी। और मैं मानता हूं जरूर आप लोग इसका एनालिसिस करेंगे, और शायद वो 28 फरवरी थी 2019।
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Slovakia, CCTV footage captures a bear running through the town. In Washington, D.C., it's cherry blossom season as visitors rush to see the trees in full bloom. And a new space junk-grabbing robot could help deal with the growing problem of space debris. Finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 1927, B.R. Ambedkar and his followers started the Mahad Satyagrah. It was a movement for basic human rights, like drinking water. The water of Chowdhar tank in Mahad was off limits to lower castes. Ambedkar led a crowd to this tank. They drank water from it in an act of rebellion. We're leaving you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
और माहौल तो ऐसा ही था।
स्वागत कीजिए सर्वजन प्रिय द मोस्ट पॉपुलर लीडर ऑफ आवर टाइम्स, प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफ भारत श्री नरेंद्र मोदी. And he's joining us here at the Rising Bharat Summit to present his thoughts on our principal theme, leading for global good. Prime Minister Narendra Modi. जोरदार स्वागत कीजिए इनका. प्रधानमंत्री जी, आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है, आभार. एंड मैं नाउ रिक्वेस्ट न्यूज 18 नेटवर्क्स मैनेजिंग डायरेक्टर एंड ग्रुप एडिटर इन चीफ श्री राहुल जोशी टू वेलकम द ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर.
Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank the Prime Minister for taking time out from his punishing schedule to be with us. Please give him a round of applause. We are indeed very, very grateful. Sir, 5 years ago on February 25th, 2019, at Rising India Summit, I had quoted Bismil Sahab in your presence in the context of the Pulwama attack. Sarfaroshi ki tamanna ab hamare dil mein hai. Soon after my welcome address, you delivered your powerful keynote without betraying anything going on in your mind. And next morning, February 26th, we all woke up to the big news of India's attack on Balakot in Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, in many ways, it was the big turning point under PM Modi's leadership towards the end of his first term. The message was as loud as it was clear. Don't mess with a strong, resurgent, confident, muscular India. And of course, don't mess with Modi. Prime Minister, that was 2019. Fast forward 5 years to January 22nd, 2024. I would say the other big turning point came on the day of Pran Pratishtha in Ayodhya, to which I was witness, a day that will go down in history as a major milestone in the life of Bharat. As I drove down the same evening from Ayodhya to Prayagraj to visit my mother, I could see amidst the celebrations and the bursting of crackers the rise of a new India. As I passed through Gonda, Sultanpur and Pratapgarh in Uttar Pradesh, I could see in people renewed hope, renewed energy, renewed confidence. In many ways, the civilizational and cultural resurgence of India is finally taking wing. A Bharat that is not only soaring, but doing so while remaining firmly rooted in its cultural moorings. अगर इसी बात को मैं आपके शब्दों में कहूं, तो यह प्राण प्रतिष्ठा का समय सिर्फ विजय का नहीं, विनय का था। राम आग नहीं, ऊर्जा है, विवाद नहीं, समाधान है, वर्तमान ही नहीं, अनंत काल है। प्रधानमंत्री जी, 22 जनवरी के दिन आपने हमारी प्रतिष्ठा में प्राण फूंक दिए। Ladies and gentlemen, the last 10 years in tangible terms have been marked by rising GDP and galloping stock markets. It has also been marked by efficient welfarism through direct benefit transfers while building an unprecedented scale of physical and digital infrastructure. Prime Minister Modi's biggest contribution is not only to take the Indian economy from the fragile 5 to the fabulous 5. His biggest contribution is to instill in every Indian a strong sense of self-esteem and a firm belief that India is finally getting its rightful place at the global high table of powerful nations. Today, our chest fills with pride that the Indian passport has gained in respect and stature. We bleed blue in every way. Finally, with your permission, Prime Minister, I would like to crystal gaze into the future. What would it be like, same time, 2029? I believe India will lead for global good, the theme of our Rising Bharat Summit this year. The next 5 years will mark a further acceleration of our journey towards a Viksit Bharat, one that will find its place in the top 3 economies of the world. Once again, it is not so much about adding trillions to the GDP, but the rise and rise of India's stature globally. At the G20, you've shown that you are a bridge builder in a divided world. The New Delhi Declaration is a clear demonstration of your influence and relationship with global leaders. Ram willing, India will soon have a permanent seat at the UN. With the rapid strides the country is taking, we'll see an acceleration in reverse brain drain into the country. Global companies will soon have headquarters in Mumbai and Bangalore, while Indian conglomerates will take a bite of the Big Apple. Modi ji, all this has been possible because you think different, you think big, but you execute bigger. Your approval ratings show you're the most popular leader in the world. To Indians here and around the world, you're also by far the tallest. To end on a high note before your keynote, I would like to quote these powerful lines from Sacha Bharat by Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. वृथा मत लो भारत का नाम, वृथा मत लो भारत का नाम, भारत एक स्वप्न भू को ऊपर ले जाने वाला, भारत एक विचार स्वर्ग को भू पर लाने वाला, भारत एक भाव जिसको पाकर मनुष्य जगता है, भारत एक जलज जिसका जल का न दाग लगता है। Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for the man of the moment, Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
नमस्कार। अभी वैसे राहुल ने बड़ा वर्णन किया 5 साल पहले मैं जब आया था, और शायद उस समिट की तारीख या घटना आपके ग्रुप को तो याद रहना बहुत स्वाभाविक है, लेकिन शायद पत्रकार मन ये भी सोच सकता था, और शायद सोचा होगा लेकिन बोलते नहीं होंगे, कि क्या कारण होगा कि एक इंसान अपने कमिटमेंट के कारण इस समिट में इतने ही शांत मन से आया था और उसी समय वो किसी प्रक्रिया को दौड़ा रहा था, और जो दूसरे दिन सुबह दुनिया के लिए बहुत बड़ी खबर बन गई थी। और मैं मानता हूं जरूर आप लोग इसका एनालिसिस करेंगे, और शायद वो 28 फरवरी थी 2019, और माहौल तो ऐसा ही था, और मैं भी बहुत शांति से आप सबसे नमस्ते नमस्ते करके निकला था, और भारत ने बालाकोट में एयर स्ट्राइक की थी रात को। और वो एक दिन था और एक दिन आज है। और आपने देखा होगा कि आतंक के सरगना हो या विकास और शांति की चाहत रखने वाले देश हो, सब ने राइजिंग भारत अनुभव किया है। ये नया भारत आतंक के जख्म को नहीं सहता है। बल्कि आतंक के जख्म देने वालों को पूरी ताकत से सबक भी सिखाता है। जो हमें आतंकी हमलों के जख्म देते थे, उनकी क्या हालत है ये देशवासी भी देख रहे हैं और दुनिया भी देख रही है। एक सुरक्षित राष्ट्र ही एक विकसित राष्ट्र का आधार होता है, और आज यही भारत की पहचान है और यही राइजिंग भारत है। साथियों, चुनाव का मौसम है, चुनाव की सरगर्मी बिल्कुल सर पर है, तारीखों का ऐलान भी हो चुका है। आपकी समिट में भी कई लोगों ने अपने विचार रखे हैं, डिबेट का माहौल बना हुआ है, और मैं मानता हूं लोकतंत्र की यही खूबसूरती है। देश में भी धीरे धीरे चुनाव प्रचार जोर पकड़ रहा है। सरकार अपने 10 साल के कामकाज का रिपोर्ट कार्ड रख रही है। हम अगले 25 साल का रोड मैप बना रहे हैं, और अपने तीसरे टर्म के पहले 100 दिन का प्लान भी बना रहे हैं। दूसरी तरफ हमारे जो विरोधी हैं वो भी नए कीर्तिमान बना रहे हैं। आज ही उन्होंने मोदी को 104वीं गाली दी है। औरंगजेब कहकर नवाजा गया है। मोदी की खोपड़ी उड़ाने का ऐलान किया गया है। इन सब पॉजिटिव नेगेटिव बातों के बीच दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा इलेक्शन जारी है। 2600 से ज्यादा पॉलिटिकल पार्टियां, करीब 97 करोड़ मतदाता, 97 करोड़ वोटर्स, करीब 2 करोड़ फर्स्ट टाइम वोटर्स लोकतंत्र के इस पर्व में हिस्सा लेने जा रहे हैं। मदर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी के तौर पर ये हर भारतीय के लिए, यहां इस हॉल में बैठे प्रत्येक व्यक्ति के लिए और आपके टीवी के दर्शकों के लिए भी उतनी ही गर्व की बात है। साथियों, आज पूरी दुनिया 21वीं सदी को भारत की सदी कहती है। बड़ी बड़ी रेटिंग एजेंसीज, बड़े बड़े अर्थशास्त्री, बड़े बड़े जानकार राइजिंग भारत को लेकर बहुत आश्वस्त है। और इन लोगों के मन में कोई इफ नहीं है, बट नहीं है, नो इफ नो बट्स। आखिर ऐसा क्यों है? कोई सवालिया निशान नहीं, ऐसा क्यों है? ऐसा इसलिए है क्योंकि पूरी दुनिया आज ये देख रही है कि पिछले 10 साल में भारत ने कितने बड़े परिवर्तन किए हैं। आजादी के बाद से जो सिस्टम बना, जो वर्क कल्चर बना, उस सिस्टम में ये ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन लाना इतना आसान नहीं था, लेकिन ये हुआ है और ये हम भारतीयों ने ही करके दिखाया है। आज भारत का कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल हर भारतीय की बातों में झलकता है। आज हम विकसित भारत की बात कर रहे हैं। आज हम आत्मनिर्भर भारत की बात कर रहे हैं। और लोग चाहे विपक्ष में हो, देश के भीतर हो या देश के बाहर हो, सब भारत की उपलब्धियां देख रहे हैं। सिर्फ 10 साल में 25 करोड़ लोगों का गरीबी से बाहर निकलना, क्या ये ऐसे ही हो गया होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का 11वें नंबर से 5वें नंबर की इकोनॉमी बन जाना, क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का फॉरेक्स रिजर्व बढ़कर के $700 बिलियन के पार पहुंच जाना, ये क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा क्या? सिर्फ 10 साल में भारत का एक्सपोर्ट $700 बिलियन पार कर जाना, क्या ऐसे ही हुआ होगा? और ये तो अभी कुछ भी नहीं है, अभी तो और भी आगे जाना है। साथियों, यहां बड़े बड़े जर्नलिस्ट मौजूद हैं, इंडस्ट्री के लोग हैं, सिविल सोसाइटी के दिग्गज हैं, पॉलिटिकल फील्ड के लोग भी हैं, ब्यूरोक्रेसी वर्ल्ड के भी लोग हैं। आप जानते हैं कि हमारे यहां सरकारों में ब्यूरोक्रेसी में काम कैसे होता रहा है। फिर वो एक फैक्टर क्या था जिसकी वजह से ये बदलाव आया। वो एक फैक्टर है नियत। नियत सही तो काम सही। और नियत कौन सी? नेशन फर्स्ट की नियत। मेरे देश में कोई कमी नहीं है कि उसकी पहचान गरीब देश के रूप में हो। हम दुनिया के सबसे युवा देश हैं। एक समय में हम ज्ञान में, विज्ञान में सबसे आगे रहे हैं। दुनिया की कोई वजह नहीं है कि भारत किसी भी देश से पीछे रहे। बस हमें नेशन फर्स्ट की नीयत के साथ आगे चलना है। ये देश जो हमें इतना कुछ देता है, हम उसमें सिर्फ रहते हैं या फिर देश के लिए कुछ अलग करते भी हैं, ये फर्क बहुत बारीक है। लेकिन बारीक सा फर्क ही देश को आगे ले जाता है। जिस दिन आप अपने काम को देश के साथ जोड़ लेंगे, आप जो कुछ भी हैं, आप डॉक्टर हैं, इंजीनियर हैं, स्टार्टअप शुरू कर रहे हैं, जिस दिन आप अपने काम को देश के लक्ष्यों के